What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we are actually going to be expanding upon a video that I made about a month ago talking about the top 5 legendary Pokemon that you want to invest your rare candies into. So many people had some questions to say, well, what about the non-legendaries? And there's actually some really good reasons as to why you would want to invest your rare candies into non-legendary Pokemon. And throughout the video, we will definitely be talking about it, as well as some of the Pokemon that you might want to actually skip on towards the end of the video. So I'm definitely excited about talking about this. If it is helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Let's go ahead and start this list off with taking a look at the future. Now keep in mind, investing your rare candies into a Pokemon does not necessarily have to be for a Pokemon that is currently in the game. It can also be taking a look at a Pokemon that will be released in the future, and once it becomes available, going ahead and evolving it. And there are definitely some benefits to this, and I want to go ahead and cover it, because the first one is Garchomp. Now, although Garchomp is not necessarily available in the game at this point in time, you can bet that it will be a Pokemon that you want to invest in. It will become one of the best non-legendary Pokemon from the Dragon typing, as well as being a solid option from the Ground typing as well, which I'm all for. If it's a #1 option, especially from 2 different perspectives, you definitely want to make sure that you are saving up some rare candies for this Pokemon. Now, there's also something else associated to this, and that's that Niantic could actually end up messing up the Pokemon very early on and then fixing it. An example of this is Blaziken. If you were able to save up some rare candy and then be ready to evolve to a Blaziken pretty much immediately, you could obtain the move Stone Edge. And Stone Edge ended up becoming a legacy move. Niantic basically messed up on it, but because of some people having their rare candies ready, they were actually able to obtain a Blaziken. So who knows, you could be able to take advantage of something like this. So if you get high IV, if you get a very good Pokemon, going ahead and evolving it could lead to some weird stuff, as well as just being ahead of the game. Up next is definitely a spicy topic as far as right now is concerned, and that is Meltan. So for those out there who have themselves Pokemon Let's Go, you may not really think about this, but Meltan, with it being 400 candies, as you can imagine, it could be fairly difficult to obtain, and then even harder if you do not have Pokemon Let's Go, or at least access to it easily. You may be worried about trying to meet up with people or coordinating it. It just ends up, unfortunately, being a little bit more of a hassle than what you anticipated. So what you really need to do, though, is if you can find yourself a high IV one, then at that point you just necessarily just kind of need the candy. If you are out there going out there raiding a lot, doing all of that, getting yourself a ton of rare candies, it could make some sense to go ahead and cut down the distance of how many you have to basically catch or talk to people about, and you can get yourself a Melmetal. I definitely thought I would mention that just because there was the featured event where we end up getting more Meltan spawns. A lot of people have it brought up where they're like, well, I don't have the game. Well, go ahead and consider that you do have at least some options you could potentially trade, and then also you could get yourself some rare candies to apply to it. So up next is Blissey. Now, the reason why I bring up Blissey is because, unfortunately, seeing one in the wild or even a Chansey is extremely difficult. It is definitely a rarer spawn. In regards to as a raid boss, it was technically available as a raid boss in Chansey form, and it was soloable, but it's not a part of like the staple raid bosses. So, unfortunately, trying to gain candy through that is not always reliable since it isn't always available. However, Chansey is available in 10km eggs, but it is definitely on the rarer side. So when you have all of these things stacking up, this is a Pokemon that you may want to invest your rare candies into. I know that I personally probably invested more into a Blissey than any other non-legendary Pokemon, at least for right now, because it is one of the best gym defenders. Now, so many people say, you know, it doesn't matter how good a gym defender it is, the best gym defender is a golden raspberry. Hey, I completely agree with you, but at the same time, Blissey is an absolute time waster. When people see a Blissey in the gym, they're like, I don't really want to deal with that, and then they usually just end up going past it. So for me personally, I definitely wanted to recommend Blissey as one, and the cool thing about it is it only costs 50 candy to evolve yourself to a Blissey. Up next is Rampardos. So the reason why I selected Rampardos is one, It is an extremely rare wild spawn. Maybe you are lucky, however, and you have seen quite a few of them. On the other hand, I myself have literally only seen one, and I thought, well, maybe it's just related to me. But when I actually went and looked on my friends list, and I have about 200 or so, I actually saw a significant amount of people putting the Cranidos as their actual buddy to get themselves a Rampardos. Rampardos is extremely rare. At the same time, it is something that you definitely want to invest in because it is the #1 rock type attacker, actually taking the title away from Tyranitar, which is why I actually want to recommend you going ahead and evolving up to a Rampardos by potentially using some rare candy. I'm actually going in occasionally and doing it, and then I'm going to leave it up to maybe some trades or something to try to get myself either a lucky or a high IV. I'm excited about it. I definitely think it is worth mentioning. It's very rare, but I actually want to know if any of you out there have actually seen quite a bit of them. Definitely let me know in the comments section. So the last Pokemon on this list that I wanted to talk about is Tyranitar. So just imagine you're one of those players who missed the community day for Tyranitar. So then you're like, well, what the heck? I hear so many great things about it, from the dark typing, from the rock typing. It is still the #1 dark type attacker, so definitely keep that in mind. We will revisit that. But other than that, it is a very rare spawn in the wild. It is available as a tier 4 raid boss, but with it being a tier 4, you definitely have to have multiple accounts with you. And because of that, it can be a little harder to organize. And as many of you know, people tend to focus on legendary raid bosses. I will say though, that if there was a tier 4 that people definitely wanted to do out of all of them, it is at least Tyranitar, so you do have that going. If you can do that, if you can raid, definitely make sure that you can pineapple it and get the candies that way. It's also available in 10km eggs, but at the same time, it is a fairly rare one as well. And maybe you're one of those people who doesn't spend money on incubators, so getting it out of the eggs is really out of the question and definitely not a strategy that you implore. But at the same time, it is one of the best dark type attackers. So what I would actually recommend you to do is to maybe focus on it from the dark typing. Go ahead and get yourself some rare candies, get up to a Tyranitar, use it as a double dark moveset, and then maybe a little bit later on, once you kind of like unlock it for sure, you could focus on trading for a SmackDown Tyranitar. Maybe somebody has like a low IV one that they would want to trade you, but definitely keep that in mind. So yeah, those are my top 5 picks. If you were wondering why I may or may not have left out another option, I'll go ahead and cover a couple briefly. Dragonite being the first one, well, mainly because it will get outclassed by Garchomp. Another option is Metagross. The reason why I didn't pick that is because, unfortunately, Metagross is not that good without Meteor Mash. So without that CA move, I would actually not recommend putting in the rare candy unless you can at least guarantee getting yourself a Meteor Mash specific Metagross. And then the third and final option is Machamp. Now, although Machamp is a great Pokemon, I'm not going to recommend you to use your rare candy to get one simply because it is a tier 3 raid boss and can be soloed at a fairly low level, at least at level 30 pretty comfortably. So I'm going to recommend you to not use your rare candies even though it is an excellent Pokemon. Definitely focus on obtaining it from the raid perspective. As far as some brainstorming goes, maybe some other ideas that you have are focusing on a Pokemon with 400 candies. Maybe you're focusing on a task, or maybe it's just a Pokemon based on the weather. It doesn't end up spawning that much, but hopefully at least some of these definitely gave you an idea. But anyways, on the channel, we like to end on a question of the day, and that is, what is the #1 Pokemon from a non-legendary standpoint that you would recommend investing your Stardust into? Go ahead and let us know in the comments section below, and I will see you next time. I wanted to extend a huge thank you to the supporters over at Patreon. You definitely make this possible, and I 100% appreciate this support. If you are interested in supporting my channel on Patreon, definitely feel free to check out the link in the description.